The Galactic Senate had one rule above all others. Not a written rule, not an enforced one, just a rule that every civilization learned eventually, through observation or through painful experience, the way children learn not to touch fire. You do not invite humanity to the table. Not because they were dangerous, though they were. Not because they were unpredictable, though they were that too. But because of what happened every single time humans sat down in a room with a problem that needed solving. They solved it. Not elegantly, not quietly, not in ways that made sense to anyone watching, but completely and permanently, and in ways that somehow left everyone else feeling like they had been thinking about the problem wrong from the very beginning. Senator of the Collective had ignored this rule. He was about to find out why it existed. The crisis had begun 14 months ago. A star in the outer reach, designation HR 7734, had begun behaving in ways that stellar physics said were impossible. It was not going supernova. It was not collapsing. It was doing something that had no name yet because nothing in recorded galactic history had ever done it before. It was expanding, slowly, precisely, in a perfect geometric pattern that could not be natural because nature did not do geometry. And it was expanding toward the 12 inhabited systems of the outer reach. Combined population, 47 billion souls. The Galactic Senate had been debating for 14 months. They had committees, subcommittees, working groups, advisory panels. They had produced 11,000 pages of analysis, 417 competing proposals, and 0 solutions. The star continued expanding, slowly, precisely, geometrically. Had watched the debates with increasing desperation. He represented 3 of the 12 outer reach systems. He had constituents. He had children who had sent him messages asking if they were going to be okay. He had run out of patience for committees. So he had done the unthinkable. He had contacted Earth. Doctor arrived at the Senate station alone. No delegation, no assistants, no security detail. Just a small woman in her 50s with close cropped hair, a worn leather bag over her shoulder, and the focused expression of someone who had already been thinking about this problem for the entire journey and had not finished yet. She was Earth's leading astrophysicist. She had learned during his research, spent 12 years working in conflict zones before her academic career, written the definitive paper on extinction-level event preparation, and once talked a rogue AI out of a recursive logic loop by explaining the concept of jazz improvisation to it. He had not been sure what to make of that last one. She shook his hand when they met, a human gesture, firm, brief, like she was already moving on to the next thing. "Show me everything," she said. No pleasantries, no diplomatic preamble. He showed her everything. She did not speak for 4 hours. She read. She watched the stellar data. She ran calculations on a small device she had brought from Earth, occasionally making sounds that were not quite words, small noises of interest or disagreement that she seemed unaware she was making. At hour 4, she looked up. "Who decided this was natural?" she asked. Blinked the initial assessment teams. "Who specifically?" He pulled up the records. 3 separate science teams from 3 different civilizations. All had concluded within their first week of observation that while the expansion pattern was unusual, it was within the theoretical range of natural stellar behavior under certain exotic conditions. Looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "It's not natural," she said. The room went very quiet. "The geometric precision alone rules out natural causation," she continued. "The expansion rate is not accelerating or decelerating, it's perfectly constant. Natural systems don't do that. Natural systems have variance. This has none." She pulled up the stellar data on the room's display and drew 3 lines on it with her finger. "These angles, 37.2 degrees, repeated across every expansion vector we have data on. 37.2 degrees is not a number that appears in natural stellar physics. It appears in engineering." "Engineering," said slowly. "Something built this," said. "Or something is doing this deliberately. The star is not misbehaving, it's being used." The silence in the room had a different quality now. "Used for what?" asked. "That," she said, picking up her bag and standing, "is what we need to find out. I need a ship. I need to go closer. and I need you to clear me through whatever security protocols you have around the exclusion zone. The exclusion zone exists because your ships don't have adequate shielding for the radiation levels at close approach, she said. I know. I read your technical reports on the journey here. Earth ships do. We built them differently after our second near-extinction event. We had a radiation problem of our own. She almost smiled. We tend to overbuild after things try to kill us. What found at HR 7734 rewrote 3 fields of science simultaneously. The star was not malfunctioning. It was not being weaponized. It was something that none of the Senate's 14 months of committees had considered because none of them had been thinking about the problem from the right direction. It was a beacon, buried in the geometric expansion pattern, visible only when you were close enough, only when you had instruments sensitive enough, only when you were looking for engineering instead of natural phenomena, was a signal. Ancient, precise, repeating. A message from something that had been here before any of the current galactic civilizations existed. Something that had built this signal into a star the way humans might carve a message into stone, expecting it to last, expecting that whoever found it would be capable of understanding it. The message, when decoded it over 72 sleepless hours aboard the research vessel, was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was not a declaration of war. It was instructions. Specifically, instructions for how to stabilize the star, how to stop the expansion, how to preserve the 47 billion lives in the outer reach systems. The instructions were written in mathematics, pure mathematics, the kind that did not require a shared language because mathematics was the same everywhere. They were also extraordinarily complex. Read them 3 times. Then she sat back in her chair and laughed, a short, tired, genuine laugh that startled the 2 crew members who had stayed awake with her. What is it? One of them asked. Whoever built this, she said, had a sense of humor or a test. I can't decide which. She turned back to the display. These instructions, they're not difficult because the solution is complex. They're difficult because you have to understand why each step works, not just what the step is. You can't follow them blindly. You have to actually comprehend them. She paused. It's a filter, she said quietly. Whoever built this wasn't just leaving instructions. They were leaving instructions that only a civilization at a certain level of understanding could use. She looked at the data for a long moment. They were waiting to see who was ready. She calmed. I know how to stop it, she said. But I need 12 of your best scientists from 12 different civilizations, not the most senior, the most curious. There's a difference, and I need them here in 72 hours. Stared at her through the comm screen. You decoded it. Most of it, she said. The last section I want other eyes on, not because I can't do it, because whoever built this wanted it done together. That's part of the test. She tilted her head. I think they wanted to see if we could cooperate, if we could put aside the committees and the politics and the 14 months of arguing and actually work together on something that mattered. Was quiet for a moment. Can we? He asked. Looked back at the star on her display. Ancient light, ancient message, ancient test from something that had been gone for longer than any current civilization had existed, something that had built a question into a star and waited to see who would be brave enough, curious enough, humble enough to find the answer. Ask me again in 72 hours, she said. It took 61. 12 scientists, 12 civilizations. One human woman who slept 4 hours in 3 days and spent the rest of the time asking questions, challenging assumptions, and refusing to accept any answer that could not be explained from first principles. When the last calculation was complete and the stabilization sequence was transmitted to the array of satellites they had positioned around HR 7734, the star's expansion slowed, stopped, reversed, gently, precisely, geometrically, back to its natural state. 47 billion people in 12 systems went asleep that night not knowing how close it had been. In the Senate chamber, when the confirmation came through, there was a long silence. Then someone started applauding, then everyone did. Stood at the back of the chamber and watched and thought about the rule, the unwritten one, the one every civilization learned eventually. You do not invite humanity to the table. He finally understood it now. Not because humans were dangerous, not because they were unpredictable. Because once you invited them, once you showed them a problem that mattered, they did not stop until it was solved. They did not do committees. They did not do 14 months of analysis and zero action. They did 61 hours and a solution. And somehow, without anyone quite noticing how it happened, they made everyone around them better in the process. Thought he might need to rewrite the rule. Not you do not invite humanity to the table. More like when everything else has failed and time is running out and 47 billion lives are on the line. You invite humanity first.